being in the moment. Because I think decision making, what I've learned, is not just getting to the decision. It's not just saying yes. It's the actual now. Once you make that yes, what happens? So you got to be present. You have to start to read and understand when you've made good decisions, how do you feel? When you make bad decisions, how do you feel? So you got to first start off of like what's going on inside of you. You have to look at it from an objective point of view. And sometimes it is an act of faith. Step out and try it.
Welcome back to another episode of the New Rules Podcast. It's your girl, Breezy. And I'm here with my injured co-host, Adrian Crawford. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm all right, but real players play through pain, so
you got a
podcast through pain,
You have any cool battle stories for us?
No, not at all. I wish I could tell you that I punched somebody defending my wife's honor, or somebody tried to jump on one of my friends and I saved a dog from some disaster. No, I just woke up. Just woke up and my wrist was just on fire. So it's the beauty of getting old. You just wake up. That's when you've hit that stage of old, when you wake up with just mysterious injuries like pulled hamstrings and carpal tunnel syndrome from just sleeping. So all good. Anything
fun going on?
No, I go to the ACC basketball tournament next week.
Okay,
I'm excited about that.
That's gonna be, I guarantee you, the first day you're gonna call and be like, I don't know why maybe we can cut this part. I don't know why I do this. This is horrible. Whatever. I'm never doing this again.
Listen, no, I will be good because it's in Washington, D.C., so I'm excited about it being in D.C. One of my favorite cities, actually, in the world is Washington, D.C. Incredible food, great history, super creative when I'm in D.C., so I'm excited. I already got it planned out. Going to Philomena.
Get yourself some pot roast.
Yeah, going to Philomena, going with my guy, Jeff Colhane. Shout out to Jeff Colhane. I do radio with, and then I'm going to be going to Founding Farmers. Yes, if you've never been to Founding Farmers, pot roast, skillet cornbread, dude. Elite.
The skillet cornbread.
Skillet cornbread's elite, and I am unapologetic in there. It's amazing.
So is it better than the place
the place we go in California?
The Grove, yeah.
Yes,
the place at the Grove.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
100% yes. And the Grove's pot roast is elite. But yeah, there's nothing like Founding Farmers. Founding Farmers food is top notch. I mean, every time I've never been there when there hasn't been a wait. I mean, even if I go there right when it opens, it's like freaking people are waiting outside. I've never been there when it's at a wait. So yeah,
we don't got places like that here.
No, we do not. Definitely not. And so, but my good friend of mine is going to actually take me. They have like 3 different ones there. So I'm going to go to Founding Farmers, and the second one is like Founding. It's something around it's like Fish Market or something like that it's supposed to be phenomenal as well.
Founding Fish Market.
Yeah, it's supposed to be something. I don't know what it is. Here, let me look real quick. Let me look while we're talking. So, Bree, go ahead.
Founding Fish.
Yeah, why I'm finding this. Why don't you go ahead and give people, your normal little PSA about, subscribing, commenting, doing your
Today
thing.
We have a special request for those of you who listen to the podcast. First off, we've had so many people come up to us randomly and be like, I love the podcast. I listen to every episode. Thank you so much for listening. Today we ask that you would please send your favorite episode to a friend.
Yeah, there we go. I like that.
Go back, find your favorite episode. I know you'll have a lot of trouble because every single one of them is just absolutely incredible. And send it over to your BFF.
Yes,
and have them give it a listen.
Please do that. It's called Founding Farmers, Fishers, and Bakers.
Oh.
Fishers and Bakers.
It's like a part of Founding Farmers?
Yeah, it's a part of the Founding Farmers family, I guess. But this is this one I think is in Georgetown. And so the other one is right on Pennsylvania Avenue, too. So that makes it right down from the White House. So that's the one. So it makes it lead. So I'm excited to go. I was there a few weeks ago, and I had an incredible time. I love D.C. I went to the the African American History Museum, and I just went through the first couple floors, took my time. So I think I may go again this time. If I go this time, I'm just going to focus all on the third floor. Just stay on the third floor because it builds its way up. And so the third floor of the African American History Museum is all about all the really cool stuff that African Americans created in American history. So, so it's a fun time. I'll probably do a couple other things. So I'm excited.
Exciting.
You got anything? Aren't you? You're going to Polk County soon, ain't you? I can't let nobody know.
We don't need to let the people know.
Yeah, hey, everybody, Polk County, Bree coming home.
No, she ain't. No, she ain't. Be careful.
Shout out to Fred's. Hey, shout out to Fred's.
I might have to pull up to Fred's Market.
You're not.
Bartow's founding farmers.
Hey, I know it is. You're not going to go. Listen, if you ever happen to just be in Bartow or Lakeland,
Florida.
In Lakeland, Florida, stop by Fred's. It's got to be like Fred's Country Kitchen, right? Or something like that.
I think it is.
Yeah, let me tell you this.
I think it's Fred's Market.
Hey,
I don't know.
One of the greatest Southern buffets on God's green earth. I mean, I went there.
I love a buffet.
Listen, I went there, and it was one of those moments where when I was in Fred's, I felt like the first time I ever went to the employee store at Nike, where I just did a lap around it to see what all was there. I went to Fred's.
That's so real.
It's so real. I go to Fred's.
You have to.
I know because as soon
they
as you
change
go,
the menu.
They start you, and here's the reason why they start you. They start you right at the front, and they have that skillet cornbread. I'm like, they're starting you off with the skillet cornbread. I'm like, what else is there? Like, normally that's at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, I'm like, they have everything. And when I tell you, it is somebody's grandmama in the back, just with a load, with so much butter and salt and all the stuff that's not good for you, and a lot of just hard years, right? Like they got probably lima beans or what's those beans you have to crack, Brie? You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, you're talking about green peas.
Green peas. Like, listen,
No, green beans.
Yeah, they're back there.
No, black-eyed peas. It's black-eyed peas.
It's black-eyed peas?
Yeah, it's black-eyed peas.
Okay,
yeah.
They're back there snapping them. Like, we ain't go buy them from the bag. No, somebody's
they got them down the road.
Yes.
They're pushing them out the little green thing. They got a discard bucket.
Yes.
And a bean bucket.
Let me tell you this. Yeah, so if you're ever in Lakeland, Florida, you happen to be down there, slide to Fred's Market. It will not disappoint you.
I grew up snapping peas.
But please make sure if you're going there, don't have any plans, like afterwards.
Oh, yeah. No.
Yeah, just go ahead and plan on just getting a nap. You got to get a nap in. Don't just try to make that as your little kind of, I'm going to go there on my little lunch break or, before I go to Disney World. You will not make it to Disney World. You'll be asleep. So anyway, that being said, Bree, what we got today?
Yeah, well, speaking of me going home, today we're going to talk about not making poor decisions. So, enlighten us.
Yo, Bree, that may be one of the funniest things you've ever said. Good job. Good job. Well played. I mean, the timing was amazing. I had no idea what was coming. Great job.
Thank you. So to start us off, can you just tell the people about a time you've made a really bad decision?
Oh gosh. Yesterday, no.
Going to sleep the other day.
Going to sleep. No, I mean, I would tell you, okay, a bad decision I made. Let me think back. Okay, when I was in college, I just decided to get a student loan for no reason. I was a college athlete. I mean, my dad was a college coach. It wasn't like I was struggling, and I wasn't like I had a bunch of money by any means, but I ended up getting a loan. And dude, I mean, that thing took forever to pay off, and it was just when I look back, I'm like, what was I, why? There was just no reason. It was just I was just trying to and I think I spent it on, you spend on stuff you don't have anymore.
You're spending on the merch store.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Boy, your boy was Sean John heavy. You know what I'm saying? Dude, I used to have Sean John, my man Diddy ain't doing well. Diddy down bad right now. You know what I'm saying? I don't even know if I can mention that. Grady may have to cut. Brady may have to beat that out of the pod right now. But he had a lot of Sean John gear back in the day. Look, I had this tough Sean John painter's outfit, Bree. It was like a painter's fit, like a whole overalls.
Stop. Dude, I'm still waiting for the day that you start wearing matching sweatsuits.
No, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, you are. You know you want to. You know you're fighting the urge. No. You're hitting that age.
Wow.
You're fighting the urge of wearing the matching sweatsuits.
No. So, but anyway, that was a bad decision. I mean, I could tell you another bad decision I made is when one summer I ended up, spending almost $40,000 trying to get this deal done with a group, and literally I picked up the phone and made a phone call just for somebody I knew and got the deal done. I spent $40,000. All I had to do was pick up the phone and make a phone call. It was I was trying to get us a kind of a shoe connect when I was running when I was doing basketball skill development, and so I ended up coaching AAU team. Now again, there were some positives because again, Grady, our our producer's brother JT played in Ole Miss, North Florida. So I got to coach JT his 9th grade year, but I coached a team out of Atlanta. And so, man, I spent 16, it was like almost 16 out of 20 weeks in Atlanta or somewhere traveling with AAU. But a lot of times, man, you're on your own dime. You're paying your own gas. You're picking guys up. You're paying for your own food. And dude, I was just like doing it and helping everybody else out. And next thing you know, I was going back doing my taxes at the end of the year. And I was like, dude, I was doing my tax. I'm like, oh my. And you start looking how much money you were spending, right? And it was hopefully because I wanted to be able to, man, it was an Under Armour team, maybe get a deal done with Under Armour. And next thing you know, it was like nothing came of it. Like nothing came of it. And then I ended up picking up the phone, calling somebody who I helped when they were in college who now work for Nike. And then the thing I was kind of looking for, they were able to hook me up. So it was just like, it's just one of those moments where it's like, I think my insecurity wanted so bad to have, like with that basketball thing, to actually have a shoe title or a shoe tag, because oh man, you're sponsored by Nike or Under Armour or Adidas. That made you seem like you were better than everybody else. And so let me tell you this: your ego will make you just make some stupid decisions. So mine cost me $40,000. So yeah. So those are two stories.
Live and you learn.
You live, yeah, you definitely do. That's a little bit painful, but yeah, you live and you learn.
Hopefully from others.
Yes, please. Let me tell you this. I always say to somebody, listen, somebody's paid $1 million, like learn, like if they paid $1 million or something, you can learn for free. There's no need for you to pay $1 million. Just take the free game. just take the free game from their pain. So.
Okay, so we'll talk about how to make good decisions, but first we should probably start off with why do we make bad ones? So why do you think that we make poor decisions?
Yeah, I think we make poor decisions because a lot of times we are never aware of how we even come to a decision. We make decisions all the time. We make decisions, when you wake up. I mean, you make a decision. Are you going to brush your teeth or you're not going to brush your teeth? You know what I'm saying? I mean, listen, that's a decision. We think like, well, you can, some people, some people don't. You make a decision to what you're going to wear that day. You make a decision on, what if you're going to pack a lunch, you're going to eat, if you're going to eat something, you're going to order food. I mean, we all make decisions. I mean, we're making hundreds of decisions every single day. But if you actually were to think about it, I think there's no process for us to make decisions. And so we just kind of go. We just kind of get just caught. But I think that because that happens, we end up sometime in places we have no idea how we actually got there. And so that ends up happening. But the other part of it is so that's the first thing. But it really comes down to one simple thing: awareness. We aren't aware how we make decisions. And then one thing that when you even talk about actually a decision-making framework, which we're going to kind of get into, is the fact that most of the stuff when people talk about this, they just talk about the mechanics of it, okay? Of like how the cognitive way to do it. But I think the first place you have to start is internally. What's actually going on in you? Because like I said earlier, my insecurity and my ego cost me $40,000 on a decision because I felt some type of way. Because I felt like if I did this, it would bring me a little bit more validity, a little bit more, it would be seen in the eyes of people that I had some success. So I think a lot of times we make bad decisions because we actually don't actually have any idea what's going on inside of us.
What are some external pressures that you frequently see that drive people to make poor decisions?
Well, let's just say let's just say like financial pressures, where all of a sudden you've put yourself in a kind of a tough situation financially. And again, and nothing that's bad. It's just that you overspent a little bit. And so what do people do? You feel the pressure. I got rent due. I got electric bill. I got cable due. So then what do people do? They'll go do like a payday loan, right? And so a payday loan, you go do something like that. And like the interest on a payday loans, it's the craziest stuff ever. You know what I mean? And like people go do that because I got to go pay my bills because of this. And so instead of trying to figure out other things, that's a quick, easy fix that ultimately ends up costing you like a lot. I see a lot of times people make bad decisions because of money, because the lack of that. I see people make bad decisions based off of ego, based off of perception. How many times have you seen people buy stuff that they probably shouldn't buy just because they want to get seen a certain way? How many people are buying, for a time we're buying Supremes and buying, all types of just designer things because at the end of the day, they want to look like they have something that really they don't have. I see people make bad decisions on not being okay with where they're at in life. They think they should be farther along, or they feel like that the current job they have. It should be, be better. So what they'll do is where maybe they're moving forward in their job and their profession, but because it doesn't have a glamorous title or title they would like, they go somewhere else and they move across country, even though they got great friendship, great relationships where they're at. So, I mean, those are things, money, just I think sometimes ego, pride, how people view you. I think sometimes just not happy with where they're at. So I think some of those are kind of just a few things that are external pressures that I think can cause people to make decisions that sometimes aren't good for them.
You mentioned awareness previously. How do you remain aware enough of yourself and aware enough of the situation in order for that to impact your decision making?
Yeah, I think you first have to start off by just asking yourself that question of when you're about to make a decision, like, what's going on? How do I feel? For me, for example, when I feel anxious about something, like I feel rushed, it's usually going to be a bad decision. Like that, like my initial thing is like I should make that decision. Where I feel like I got to make the decision right now. If I don't make the decision right now, it's the worst. It's like I'm going to miss this moment. I'm going to do whatever. And normally when I do that, it ends up being a really bad decision. And so I think the first thing you have to do, you have to start to read and understand when you've made good decisions, how do you feel? When you make bad decisions, how do you feel? So you got to first start off of like what's going on inside of you. And then from there, you work your way out. You go in to out, okay, versus you're always working. A lot of times it's like people are trying to figure out, okay, here's my decision-making framework. I'm doing this, and this, and pros and cons list and all that, right? People do that. Versus realizing, okay, but like what's actually happening inside of me? Have I ever felt this feeling before? That's the other thing. You got to be really good at pattern recognition. You got to learn, like, man, I mean, because I think when you have good pattern recognition, it actually will help you be able to then start to make the right types of decisions as you move forward.
Okay, so how do you know the difference between when you are making a rushed decision versus when, like, there are just times where you have to make the call and you have to make the call fast? How do you know the difference and how do you respond accordingly?
Yeah, I think that when you think about a rush decision, those things do happen, right? All of a sudden, I mean, there's an emergency that happens, right? And you can't wait. Do I cancel this meeting? Or do I go to this, I have this big meeting, but then I got a phone call from someone who's in need. What decision do I make? I think that in those moments, you have to be able to kind of like take a moment, take a deep breath. Now, again, if you're a person of faith, maybe you pray. If you're not, then maybe just say you sit there and you try to still yourself for a moment and just try to take a few deep breaths. I mean, if it's like a rash, just like if it's a quick decision, sometimes I tell people there's no decision that you have to make that you can't take 10 seconds or 15 seconds to take deep breaths to try to see if you can think clear about it. Just take deep breaths to see if you can think clear. And again, even then, you may walk on that side and you may not have like this perfect answer. Like, I 100% know this, but I think that you'll feel a little bit better knowing, okay, like what's really the most important? Because sometimes if you take a step back just for 10 or 15 seconds, it can feel like, because if somebody calls you and say, hey, Bree, I need you to get here right now because, man, this is an emergency, and they give you the situation. And then all of a sudden, if you just like, you're like, okay, and you feel their anxiety, if you just like, okay, I'm dropping everything, I'm just going to go. But if you maybe take 10 seconds, like, okay, hold up. What did they just say? What's going on? They want me to come over because they just broke up with their boyfriend for the 45th time? You're like, no, big dog. You know what I'm saying? Like, you listen, you've walked through this before. We've done this enough. I think you may be able to handle this on your own, right? But it's a whole different thing. Like, hey, get over here right now. I'm feeling very lightheaded. I feel like I'm going to pass out. That's a whole different thing. I think sometimes you take a step back. You got to take a step back, take a deep breath to gather information, and then I think that can actually help you see clear. See if you can just pull yourself up from the situation just for a moment.
Okay. Whenever I think about how you think about things, like let me give an example, tied to communicating. I feel like in your mind, there's just like this mind map of everybody in the room, what's going on, what happened to them before they walked in, after they walked in, how that's impacting the room, what that means for what you're about to say to them, how you're going to change what you're about to say, when you're talking to them, when you're going to be talking to them as an individual, when you're going to be talking to them as a group, and all of that real-time like awareness and information that you're picking up intuitively is changing decisions you're making literally by the second, like real time. And so some of what I want to understand and what I want the listeners to hopefully learn from is how do you practice making those kinds of decisions, like real time in the moment?
Yeah, the first thing is that it's experience, to where it's familiar. Listen, as much as, I've said it before that human beings are very unique, but we're also as well frozen water, right? Like, we're our unique snowflakes, but we're frozen water. So the reason why I say that is because once you've seen it, and then you actually know the people you're walking into a room with, you kind of can pinpoint what's actually going on with them. So experience lets me know. So, for example, if someone comes in and let's just say they naturally have a melancholy kind of like they naturally are more that kind of bent. And then let's say I know a little bit of their story. I know their story is that, man, around this time, it was a breakup that they had of a very important relationship. So that information's stored there. And then on top of that, I actually know a little bit of that, man. We got a busy week coming up, and they're the point person on this project. And they walk in, and I just look at their body language, right? And they've got the mopey face, and you can kind of see that, right? So then in that moment, I have to make a decision. Have they had this, I start processing like, okay, have they had this kind of mopey attitude for 3 weeks? If they have, you're probably going to see a different side of me a little bit. They try to get them to like snap out of it a little bit. If I know that, man, they really have tried, they're working hard, but they're going through it, I'll have a little bit more empathy toward them. I may even say, hey, why don't you just go home for the day? Just because, again, sometimes that's what they need and they'll come back. Also, I look at how they've responded in the past. Some people, they respond really well. When they have I've let them, hey man, go home. You're okay. Like, do this. Sometimes people haven't. They want to do this and they want to do it to get attention. And you're like, nope, you need to learn how to tough this out a little bit. So I think, but it is experience. And so when I'm in there, I'm thinking through all those, but it really is. It's, I don't know so much. You're right. Like being a mind map, but when I do, it's just like, I just kind of can tell. I'm like, this person's here. And it's just some of those things I can just see. And then I just act accordingly with it. But it does come with experience, because there's been times where I've read things completely wrong. There's still times now that I read things wrong. But what I do when I read it wrong, I don't beat myself up anymore. I used to be like, oh my gosh, you got to have it perfect. What's wrong with you? Man, you probably hurt that person's feelings. You know what I do? I'll literally say, there's been times with you where I've read something wrong, and I'll be like, oh, hey, I'm really sorry. That's what I thought it was, blah, blah, blah. But here's what I do. Instead of beating myself up, curious and compassionate, what did I read? Did I read that right? Okay. And then here's what's really interesting is when that person will tell you, oh, that wasn't it. And then, but you know me, I'm always listening. But 2 weeks later, that person will talk about that issue. And there's like, oh, no, it wasn't. I don't say anything to them. I just put it in my memory bank of like, nope, that's it. And that gives me some more information about them, that when they're in pressure moments or they feel some type of way, they're prone to lying, because of how this is. So I'm like, so when they now tell me, their believability gets a little bit lower with me in those moments. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I'm tracking. I was going to say, from the situation where they say that's not it, yep, and then you walk away and then you kind of read, oh, that was it, but they said it wasn't. Mm-hmm. How do you not in that moment think to yourself, I must have read that wrong still?
Yeah, I think it's because if I felt, because I've done, just again, living life, I've dealt with it enough. And then if I had that feeling, sometimes for me, it is intuition, which we can get to about different ways people make decisions. But for me, when that intuition, that internal feeling that I have, when normally I feel like the decisions I make are right, and I felt that feeling in that moment, and I find out later from information that maybe they said I overheard or whatever, that I was right in that I don't doubt it, because when I've had that feeling before, normally I've been right. So my intuition usually speaks to me about a situation being right. So I have enough data points. Again, when you're younger, it's harder, because you're trying to figure it out. You're trying to, you're trying to get enough data points in your life to realize this and recognize, like, oh, when I felt this way, well, maybe I was wrong. Maybe I didn't see that the right way. I think I was. And then you know what you'll do? You may look at something 5 years from now and be like, oh, I was right about that, because you've got more data points to it.
So you mentioned intuition, and obviously you are a lot more intuitively driven. Mm-hmm. The other side is more data driven, which I don't even think is the right word to encompass it, because I think intuition and emotions are a form of data, but let's say more logical, numerical.
Yep.
What is the benefit of both of those?
Yeah, I think sometimes, man, if you are, depending on the state that you're in, depending on like how well you do at like self-assessment, self-awareness, if you are somebody who may have intuition, but the truth be told about your intuition is that you haven't learned how to regulate your emotions well. Your emotions can read a situation wrong, and so what actually data logical things can do, numbers can show you, reading whatever can help you, is that it can actually help like guide you better. Because then, and also if you're trying to learn, here's the other reason why that's good. If you don't know if this is right or wrong, but you feel like it is, sometimes getting that data will confirm or deny what you're feeling. So then you can start to learn your own intuition from there. So I think a lot of times when you're learning how to make proper decisions, I think being data driven, being numerical or logical is really important, because again, you don't have enough data points yet. But I think that's a way that you can learn. One of the things for me is that's one of the later things I do is start there. But I have friends of mine who have a lot of data points, but they do start with a lot with logic. Like that just they start there. It helps them a ton to start with, like, okay, what's the actual numbers or the facts or whatever, and then they build kind of their feeling intuition out of that situation. But a lot of it starts from the base of numbers, and that's kind of how they can just dive in and figure problems out really, really well.
Do you use that same framework whenever you're making business calls, like when you're deciding to start new ventures or make investments?
Yeah, definitely. I start with intuition. Am I feeling this? Where am I at with this? And then what I'll do, though, is the next thing I do, especially if it's when it comes to like a new venture, I definitely talk to people. I have a few different people in these moments who I talk to who actually they have a real understanding of who I am personally. But also they're kind of one of those, I have like different people. Some people who I talk to are maybe one or two that are risk takers. So, but then I talk to people who are on the way other side, where they're like, no, it's got to make complete like sense, because why I talk to them is because it forces me to have to be able to logically explain it to them. Mm-hmm. A lot of times if I tell people, if I cannot explain it to someone, I don't have it. And what I used to do is get really frustrated, because I would go to my logical friends and it makes so much sense in my head, but when I really would explain it to them, it made no sense. And it's because I didn't have enough information. Here's what it was. I didn't think about it deep enough. It wasn't the fact of it was maybe not, it wasn't the right call. I just did not think deep enough about it to really be able to explain it. And so what I've realized too is that if I cannot explain it to you well, then I don't think I don't normally do it. I've got to be able to sit there and explain to you why I'm doing this, why it makes sense. Here's the benefits of it. And then, here's some data points or whatever that goes with it. But I've got to be able to explain why and how this ties to vision, or how it ties to me personally, and how this can make an impact, or this continues to move the mission forward in this kind of way. So
I know this is a special circumstance, mm-hmm. but I'm still going to talk about it.
Yeah.
What do you do when you think that something is correct more intuitively, mm-hmm. but research doesn't necessarily back that thing up?
What I will tell you is that there have been moments where logic didn't make sense. Like my first business venture I did, logically, it didn't make any sense. The reason why was because doing basketball sport-specific training was not a thing yet, where we know sport. It's $1 billion industry now, all sport-specific training. Also, basketball was the third most popular sport in Tallahassee at the time, and so the city where I live at. And so in that, it made no logical sense. No one had really done it. People weren't really doing this across the country, especially trying to make a living. Now, the ones who were doing it, very few, and they were doing it all in big cities, right? Bigger population, bigger market, whatever. And so when I told people I'm going to do this, I mean, like, people who love me, care for me, thought I was crazy, because I turned down college coaching jobs. There are sometimes in moments where you just know. And here's the reason why I knew this, is because I wrote down years prior, and I thought about it years prior, of like being able to to start at like a basketball skill training academy. Even before it was a thing, I wanted to start an academy. So like the opportunity presented itself. Here's the other thing too. I knew where I was supposed to be. I had some other really clear points of my other clear points of decision making of where I really felt I needed to be in Tallahassee. And so because I knew it needed to be in Tallahassee, okay, I had to figure out how did I want to make a living. I knew also I just didn't want to work some random job. I actually wanted to do something that I was passionate about, something I feel like I was good at. And so I just trusted that, and I went with that, and I bet on myself. But so there were other like data points that lined up of where I was supposed to be. I had seen it work in Europe. And, you know, I had seen it work in other places, but a lot of people had never seen it work like in a small town like Tallahassee when it wasn't popular. So but sometimes, here's what I'll say too, sometimes it is an act of faith. You just have to step out and try it. And you have to go for it. You know what? And I could have swung and missed. And the thing is, you swing and miss, you get up, and then you got to evaluate and analyze why did you swing and miss. And so, but sometimes, I've had that happen. I made a decision and I swung and missed and then kept it moving. So.
How do you feel when you swing and miss?
Oh, it sucks. Like because you want to get everything right. But what I've realized is that it's nothing I feel like you do. If you have felt well to do it, it ends up being in vain. Like we had a meeting today about a new venture that we're working on. Well, here's what's wild about it. Almost 10 years ago, I was working on stuff with that. And things and research that I had for this project, on and on. And you know what? And we had a little stuff of it get off the ground, but nothing that was really panned out to be good enough. And but now watching it play out, it was something that was like beginning seeds of a vision for something to now watch what we're about to do with it. It's going to be even 10 times better than anything I ever could have done. So I just tell people, sometimes you may do something that may not work out the way you want it to work out, but I can tell you over years of doing and living, a lot of the information, a lot of things that I thought were strikes, or where I struck out, actually ended up being information that I used earlier, were the beginning seeds, tools, things for something later that I would do.
How do you know when you're making a decision that's based off of accurate information or when it's based off of something that is emotionally driven? And I think that can be true for those who are intuitive and those that are more research-based, because you can literally find research to back anything you want it to.
Yeah. Adam Grant, who is a phenomenal, kind of a psychologist, organizational psychologist, wrote a book called Think Again. And he talks about the approaches you have to take when it comes to information. And I'm trying to remember all of them. But one, he's like, sometimes we approach it as like a lawyer, where all you're doing is arguing facts. Another one, as a preacher, you're arguing like this is the gospel, so people can't argue with you. Or you're like a politician. You really don't care what people think. You're trying to convince them. But he says the way that you have to look at data is like a scientist. And so when you're saying, how do you know the difference between if it's intuition, research, whatever, you have to just be willing to try to you have to look at it from an objective point of view and try to prove the side wrong. Let's say I think this is it, and your intuition's there. Then here's what I tell you: go to the other side of the coin. Try to prove it wrong, because either it's going to strengthen your view, or it's going to disprove your view. The biggest thing you have to do is be honest with yourself. Because if you just want to do something, then just say you want to do it. Don't try to skew data or your decision-making just a way, it just makes sense. The data says this, my intuition says this. When you're like, no, you just want to go do that. And so that's why it's so important to know yourself, because when you are, like you said, emotionally driven and it doesn't maybe come from a good place, you will let the data say whatever. Your perception will be often wrong. I mean, how many times have you woken up in the middle of the night, right? And you wake up and that piece of clothes hanging on the chair, and you're like, "Oh, dog, that's Freddy Krueger!" Like in my room, you know what I'm saying?
Too often,
yeah, right. And here's the thing: because why you get up, and maybe it's because waking up at night, the fear. So now the driven emotion has now allowed your perception to be off. How much more can we look at a number that says very clear this is a bad investment or this is a bad decision? How many people do you know where all that stuff is telling them this is a bad decision, you going and dating that person is a bad decision. Everyone says it's a bad decision. You know it's a bad decision. You know he was talking to his ex the other day, and you saw the DM, but you literally read the text. Oh, no, he was just being friendly. When he was inviting her over saying, are you up? And you're like, oh, no, he's just being friendly at 3 a.m. Like, no, you read the data says something completely different. And so how many times do we see people like that? Is because our emotions and our feelings can read it the way we want to. That's why you have to approach it like a scientist. I really believe in how Adam Grant says it. You have to try to disprove what you actually want. And I think you actually can come to rational places from there.
When you've made some of your best decisions, what framework have you used?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is this, is I think that I start off by always being willing to, I have to be aware. And then the next thing I have to do is the other part of the framework for me is I say being attentive, being in the moment. Because I think decision making, what I've learned, is not just getting to the decision. It's not just saying yes. It's the actual now, once you make that yes, what happens? So you got to be present in that decision-making process. You got to be evaluating as that decision is playing out. Sometimes decisions are instant. Sometimes you make a decision, and that decision doesn't play out for 6 months. It doesn't play out for 12 months, or whatever. And so you got to stay present and stay aware and be in those moments. And then the third thing, after you have to do that, then you analyze. So those are usually 3 things that I do. I try to be aware of what's going on internally, right? Then from there, I try to be attentive. I try to be in the moment as decisions and how it's processing, what's going good, what's not going good, why is this good, and moving there. And then at the end of it, whether if it's good or bad, I then analyze it to then say, why did it go good? What can I do? Because now all I'm trying to do is get information to recognize patterns. So the more I can do that, the more I can make quicker, faster decisions in the future.
What's the best decision you've ever made?
Wow. Best decision I ever made.
Outside of hiring me.
Yes, definitely top 5. No, I would say for sure as a person of faith, I would say my relationship with with Jesus is definitely top decision of my life. It's shaped my life. It has shaped my worldview. It has changed me. As someone who never thought he'd ever be committed into friendships, relationships, things like that, it's really locked me in. I've got some of my best friends in the world because of it. I mean, again, being married to Wendy, for over 20 plus years, having 3 incredible kids, just the way I see the world and view the world, it's shaped almost everything, and it's not easy, but it's been the best decision I ever made. And then the second thing is, I think what we always say is like who you marry. I always tell people is that I didn't know. I think my intuition led me a lot because I would have, from an actual rational, logical standpoint, if you just looked at the thing, it wouldn't have been where Joseph, Wendy, and I, when we talk about it, it was like we're so different in a lot of areas. And so a lot of people look, oh, I'm compatible, I can do this. And I was like, no, but my intuition was like what you actually need. And so that was kind of the second, best decision that I've actually made because we actually make a really, really good team. And I think that's the other part too, is you go through life and and this isn't a relationship podcast, but I tell people, man, like you need to be with somebody that you actually, that you can have a great partnership and do life with well, and that you guys are heading in like similar directions. Like you're willing to support one another, or if you're 2 people who are very ambitious and you can run, like that person has the capacity that you have, or if they don't have the capacity, you're maybe you're running toward a vision, but they don't have that, but man but their hearts, man, how do I support? How do I do that? I mean, that may be a way that you can do it. I mean, again, you got to just make sure that you can see yourself with somebody where you make a really, really good team, because that's what matters, because at the end of the day, looks go away, feelings go away, newness goes away, and then it's just the mundane. You know what? And then the mundane is the part that's where great teams and great people and great partnerships are built. So those are 2 most important decisions in my life. And then honestly, and I'm not just saying this, I mean, to have children was the 3rd most important decision. And like, again, it's a decision that sounds crazy because like literally when you have kids, it's just like, especially my kids are all getting to a point now where it's actually really, really fun with them. But like a lot of people talk about that. And I think there are people who do really care, like, oh my gosh, my kids are young, I love them, da, da, da. Listen, when my children were young, that job was hard. It was like I didn't enjoy. I loved them, but I didn't enjoy a lot of being a parent. But as my kids have gotten older, it's been there. But like, man, having kids, because it's just made me just a better human. It's beaten selfishness out of me. It's made me sacrifice more. It's dealt with. I would not be as emotionally aware if I did not have my children in my life, because I knew I had to figure this out or I was going to screw them up. You know what I'm saying? And I tell people, you're going to mess your kids up. The question, what you're trying to do, your mess ups, you want them to be $5 mess ups, not $5 million mess ups with your kids. And so like, you're going to mess up. But I didn't want that. And so you have to work on your stuff. And so having kids have made me just a better human being. I think a better leader. I think someone who now is able to help others because I think of that sacrifice. So
exciting.
Yeah. What about you? Best decision? Your top 2 decisions.
Top 2 decisions? Yeah. I mean, the obvious first is for sure committing my life to Jesus. As cheesy as that answer can be at times.
Yeah. I know people say that. It's like, you know, we just shy away so much.
Yeah, we speak a little different,
like the cheesy Christian things, because people have made those things. I've committed my life to Jesus, and he's just, you know, he's now my friend, and life is easier, and I sit on his lap and rub his beard.
Ew.
I love Daddy God. And you're like, hey,
no,
yo,
I can't. That's not me.
No, it's not.
If that's your story, babe, that's not my story.
No, that's your story, babe. You need a different one. But all right.
No, but I will say that I think what makes it not cheesy is when you can like clearly articulate why.
100%.
And I think for me it's that like my like day-to-day life is really, really hard. And I think that I genuinely do live at a different level of peace, and like I'm so much more present in my life because I'm a lot less afraid at what the world can throw at me because I live my life for something greater. As you know, abstract and like I said, as Christianese in a sense that can sound, it really is true. Because I could not fathom like the level of fear that I would like. I'm afraid now, like a lot, honestly, and so I could not imagine like the level of just like anxiousness or fear that I would feel like just living life day to day. On top of that, if I didn't have the boundaries for my life that I have right now, like the level of intake, the different kind of intake that I would have in my life. If I weren't to have committed my life to Jesus, it would just be so radically different. So that's my first one for sure. My second one, I honestly, it's kind of in a similar vein, but I think for me, it's not trying to fit the caricature of a follower of Jesus. I would probably put that at this phase of my life. I would say that for sure, because the older I get, the more I realize, especially in the South where it's a lot more prevalent, how much we lean towards like a character of people and label it as a Bible. And that just, it frustrates me. So I'm really grateful that I haven't taken these just super vague ideas that people label as deep and use them to guide my life. But I really do believe that I critically think about my faith and how it applies to my life on a daily basis. And because of that, I think at a pretty young age, I live my life to where I view my faith and the way that I live my life as something that only I own. And I face it that way every day. It's like, why am I doing what I'm doing? How am I acting out what I really believe? And I'm really grateful that I do it that way, because there's a lot of pressure to not.
Nope. That is really good, because I do think, and you know, if you take faith out of it, I think a lot of times, you know, people just take on caricatures of what they think people do. You know, like we're starting to see it a ton. Like, you know, I see people who do podcasts in the podcast space, to where now it's like, you know, you can just start to pinpoint people in podcast space. So if you're like, you know, if you're a sauna cold tub bro, it's like everybody sounds the same, looks the same, yet wears the same wearables, like, you know, drink Athletic Greens, and, you know, or they have all
gotta get your Bloom supplements.
Yeah, you know, just stuff like that. And you're like, okay, well, that was, you started off this way. Or like, man, one for sure right now is in like Christian thought leader podcast space. Oh my gosh, it's becoming one of my least favorite spaces, because now it's like, it's this, let me just say something that like kind of rhymes or sounds deep, and then let me push the microphone away from my face. Like I just said, the deepest revelation in the history of God's planet, deeper than Jesus. And you're just like, and what's crazy is people are like, ooh, and you're like, did you really think about what they just said? Because if that makes you go, ooh, then you're really not that deep of a human, you know? And I think that becomes it, because people start building caricatures there.
Okay, but why it's frustrating?
Yeah,
you know, air it out.
Air it out. Do your thing. Go for it.
Okay, but why that's frustrating is because then the majority start to think that is deep. What is actually deep is labeled as shallow.
Yes.
And 100%. Not only is it labeled as shallow, it's labeled as wrong and sinful.
Yep.
And it's like, no, you're just legalistic and you want to fit in.
Yes.
So don't be mad at others for, you know, painting the way that they paint. Yes.
Because like I said, I tell people all the time, I'm, you know, and again, I know we're kind of off the rails a little bit, but like in decisions, I'm like, I just have made a decision. And sometimes it frustrates and pisses people off about me. It's like, I like what you're saying, I cannot stand when you just start morphing to a thing just for the sake of morphing to a thing. When you start, you know, if it's in the faith space and people all start just using certain language, and you get around them and you're like, and they just start using like terms, and you're like, well, no, how are you doing? And you just throw these like, oh, well, I'm blessed and highly favored, I'm doing great. I'm like, well, no, how are you doing? Oh, the Lord is my shepherd. I know that, but how are you doing? Oh, he's my rock. I know that. How are you doing? And like, and they just keep using these words. I'm like, dude, like, do you not know how you feel? It's okay to say, like, you know what, man, right now, dude, no. Like, you know what, I believe in God, but I really want to blow my brains out. Like, oh, thank God. It's like, thank you, you're honest with me now about where you're at. And, like, we live in this world to where people do that. And so what ends up happening, it's inauthentic. And what happens is that and even when people who talk about, I want my faith to be attractive, it's not attractive to people, because people they can read through that nonsense and they can see, they're like, you don't even know. I'm more aware than you're aware. And so how is that? That's the biggest thing. You say that you are a follower of the God who created all these, of the heavens and the earth, and yet and still, like, there are people who are way more aware of what's going on inside them than you are, because what you've now done is now just put on this veneer and this outfit of what a Christian person should be, but yet still you've not allowed the working of God's Spirit to actually change you. And then now what it turns into, it's like, that's why the fake deep conversations and people having their podcasts and pushing away, it drives me up a wall, because what you're doing, you're just building shallow people who can't think on their own. Like, listen, you know what? Let me tell you, it's really good people who think deep. I should walk away from them later and be like, oh, shoot. Like, I mean, listen, I've heard people speak, and I've literally sat and thought about it for like weeks. I'm like, dude, what? And it's got multiple ways it could go. Like, you know, God rest his soul, Tim Keller. He would say stuff, and it'd be like 3 weeks later, I'm like, what in the world? I'm like, what did he say? Or, look, I'm just in hip hop. Like, you know what I'm saying? People would always, like, I can listen to somebody. People, I love their lyrics. It's like later on, I'm listening. I'm like, I can listen to songs right now by certain rappers that I'm still learning something from what they said. Again, we gotta learn how to think deep. Had nothing to do with where we're going today. But like,
well, I have an example, because, and we talked about this a little bit. I have the shirt. I think I wore it on our last episode that says "Growing is lonely."
Yeah.
And I wore this in a Christian space at one point, and then I'm not kidding you. By the end of the day, I wanted to cry because I was so frustrated. No, there was multiple people who came up to me. Again, wouldn't really say it straight, but were basically like, are you okay? Like, what do you mean growing is lonely? Like, Jesus is with you. Like, that. I'm not kidding you. These are actual things that people would say. And I was like, I literally wanted to look and be like, this is why growing is lonely. This conversation right here is why growing is lonely. And this is true whether you are someone of faith or not. Like, when you grow, it is lonely.
Keep talking. Keep going.
Oh my gosh. Literally drove me insane.
But why? Go deeper. Why does that drive you insane?
Because it dehumanizes the gospel.
Yes. And can I just read something to you real quick?
Yeah.
For everybody who asked that question, oh, God is with you. This is written by the man who was known after a man after God's own heart in the Bible named King David. King David says this in Psalm 25. I am lonely and afflicted. Relieve my troubles of my heart and free me from my anguish. This is a man, and here's the reason why I want people to know this. And I know for some of you who listen to this that you're not a person of faith, so please just let me go on this rant, okay? And then again, or you can just stop the pod or whatever, or maybe this will actually help you.
Or you can listen and think about how it still might apply.
Yes, because here's my thing. This is what I'm saying. This is somebody in the Bible that is saying a man after God's own heart. I believe he had God's own heart because he was freaking honest. He had God's heart because he was honest. He told God where he was at. But what he did is he still trusted in the end. And most people start with, oh, yeah, but he's with me. We know that he's with you, but you don't really believe that. Because there's the same people who say that to you are the same people that when they go through stuff, they're questioning where God is. They're, where's he at? He's not good. What did I do? I did all these things. And you're questioning, no, baby girl. I thought he's with you all the time. Then act like he's with you. Don't know. When things go rough, don't act like you're scared now. Nope. Make sure you're keeping your little veneer up. Make sure when you're alone, because this is what happens. When you're alone, you really begin to say what you really think. And that's where it's like, if you want, and this goes to anybody, this is no longer about faith, this is in life. If you want to grow, you have to be honest with yourself. The greatest place of growth is an awareness of self, of where you are. If you do not do that, you will limit how you grow as a leader. All the stuff that we talk about, all the stuff that we try to help you with, start from that basement of self-awareness of knowing where you're at. Because if you're not willing to do that, then you have no idea what to apply to actually help you. The stuff that you apply are trying to fix things or moving in a direction that's not really where you are at. So if you want to grow, be honest. And most people don't do it. Growing is freaking lonely. It's lonely. And you know what? I'm saying that as a person who has really good friends. Like, I've got, incredible friends. Like, my friends, seriously, I would put them up against anyone in the planet's friends. I got friends that if something happens, they are not hesitating to get on the plane. I got other friends that, listen, they would show up and they would be like the town and they would ask the question, whose car we're driving if we have to go bury a body. Like, I've got friends like that. I've got friends like that, man, if I needed financially this, they would do this. I've got friends who would go on my behalf on anything. I've got really good friends I can pick up, I can call, and let me tell you this. In leadership and in growing, it is lonely. It is just part of it. And so, good job, Bree. I love the shirt.
Thank you.
The shirt's amazing.
And then a few days later, I did wear it to the office, and Dr. Zoda came up to me and he said, "Did you make that shirt? Because we talk about that all the time." I was like, "No, but thank you." I was like, oh, see, that's what I'm talking about.
That's what I'm saying. One of the leading family therapists out there. All you people going to therapy and doing stuff like that, but let's say you're still lying to your therapist. That's another thing. Stop lying to your therapist. You're spending $150 an hour for your freaking lie. You lie all the other time. Just lie. Just go lie online, okay? That'll help. That'll save you That'll save you $150. You're lying to the person who can actually help you. Oh, how you doing? Oh, I'm fine. And well, how's your relationship? Oh man, he did this and he was mean to me. Not leaving out the whole part to where you just showed up like a basket case and slap homeboy and said something crazy to him and then stalked him and then say I love you, I hate you, leave me, da da da. But all your therapist knows you're like, oh yeah, he walked away from me. I'm like, yeah, because you acted crazy. Like, tell that part. All right, sorry.
Yeah. Boom.
Until next time, keep writing
new rules.